If Apple gets on Bitcoin, they generate $1 trillion of additional market cap just on the balance sheet maneuver. That's the first trillion. If they build it into an iPhone, you make another trillion. If you're smart, you have a $10 trillion asset in your cloud and you become a $10 trillion bank. If they do it, or they don't do it, right? The world's full of examples of empires topple because they did not embrace a new technology. The Romans needed the Etruscans to whiff, mm-hmm. and for the Greeks to take their eye off the ball, and then one thing leads to another, and when you get enough power, you start to become more closed-minded. Right? If you have enough money and enough power, you don't need to learn anything new. What we see going on right now is every single powerful person in the world is asked the question, "What do you think of Bitcoin?" Everybody, the premier of Russia, every world leader, every major investor, every major influencer, everybody's got to have an opinion. Ask yourself the question, how many of them spend 100 hours studying Bitcoin to form an opinion? I don't think there's a single person with a negative opinion that spent 100 hours studying it. I don't think you're out on the limb there. I just think the world's full of people that they haven't spent 10 hours studying it. And yet, if I walked up to you in 1900 and I said, I got electricity, I want you to put it in your building. I want you to put it into your carriage. I want you to put it into your ship. Or I want you to, you manufacture food, I want you to use electricity instead of steam power or mechanical power. Okay, how many people would stop and study it, and how many would think they would master it and figure it out with 1 hour of consideration? I think the only thing you got to do is figure out how much of it you can buy, and the reason to stop buying it would be you're buying it with leverage or with a mark-to-market loan that could cause you to get forced liquidated. So if you had $1 million sitting around, you just buy Bitcoin and hold it and wait. I think the way to think of it is, here's my model for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price is going up because of inflation. Saifedean says 14%, right? We know that in the absence of everything else, if you had complete adoption, if 8 billion people had Bitcoin and we had world currencies and the US dollar was the world currency and we inflated it 14% a year, then you would think Bitcoin would go up 14% every year as the currency kept getting inflated. So the price of the dominant monetary network or dominant monetary asset goes up by inflation. And the second dynamic is adoption. There's a rip, right? That if there's $100 billion of demand for Bitcoin, then it's going to go up faster than the 14% because there's a short squeeze as people are trying to buy the stuff faster than the market wants to sell. And if you went from 1% adoption to 2% adoption, you could imagine that the price could double just because the adoption doubled even in no inflation, right?
Correct.
If I can move the money at the speed of light on the layer 2 or the layer 3, and if I can do 1 billion transactions a day, or let's take El Salvador, right? 3 million people download a wallet and they start doing remittances. Is there demand for Bitcoin? Sure there is, right? So as the technical utility increases, as we go from, and by the way, the technical utility drives and feeds back into the adoption, right? Because there's 3 million people in El Salvador that now have maybe a bit of Bitcoin or the ability to buy Bitcoin in a split second that couldn't buy it 6 months ago. So if you look at a world going from 100 million people with what's low utility, I buy it and I hold it for 100 years. That's low velocity, 100 million adoption. 200 million and I move it every year. 400 million, 800 million, 1.6 billion. As the user count increases, that's going to drive things. But the adoption is not just user count, right? Like if you're building the model, you would say, well, how much money? People talk about Bitcoin and network effects and Metcalfe's law. Okay, again, if you're just looking at it in a cursory way, you're saying, oh, Metcalfe's laws apply. But if you're thinking a bit deeper about it, you're thinking, Newton's laws apply, right? Astrophysics applies. If you bring $100 billion to the network and you're one person, that's more important than if you brought $1 to the network and you're one person. Mm-hmm. And so you have to do a dollar-weighted assessment of adoption, right? And you would almost say the value of it is a function of the total amount of capital plus the velocity, right? What's the amount of money that shows up? What's the velocity of the money that shows up? What's the utility of the money that shows up? And when you think about it that way, it becomes pretty clear that as we march from one use case to 1,000 use cases, holding it is one thing, lending it out for yield is another thing. What if I put a lien on it? What if I can lock it up for 5 years? What if I can create a trust? What if I gave you a trust that's good for the rest of your life and the life of your firstborn child for the next 1,000 years? And it's an app, and I just fund it with 2 Bitcoin. And you can't ever sell the Bitcoin, but you can live off of the yield of the Bitcoin for the next 1,000 years. It's an application, right? I can create insurance policies. I can create trust funds. What if I gave you a Tesla car, and I put a Bitcoin in the car, and the car refueled itself forever and maintained itself? It's a self-maintaining car, more valuable than a non-maintaining car, right? It's like I hand you something with an endowment, right? Yeah. So as that happens, as you get more money flowing on the network and more people flowing on the network and more utility flowing on the network, the price goes up. And does it go up forever? But why? Yeah, because as I said, it's the language of money. What's that mean? It's like English. Right? How long's been around? Long time. It's like base 10 math, right? Here's the thing about it, right? People don't get this part. Bitcoin is math, but it's a type of math. It's like base 10 math. The Bitcoin protocol is a protocol for money. Now, I hand it to you. You can either say, great, this is the dominant protocol for money. This is the winner, and I'm going to buy as much of it as I can. Or you can keep trying to commercialize base 16 math and base 32 math and base 2 math and base 4 math and, the base 16 math. Base 10 math is not the only mathematical protocol any more than the metric system is the only system of measures. It happens to be one that we adopted. There's no reason to think it doesn't last 1,000 years. It could last 10,000 years, right? And that's the part that people don't get. So when I say it's going up forever, I'm saying, well, will the technology get better? Obviously. Will adoption increase? Well, I guess you could say it gets pegged out. When adoption is 8 billion people, when everybody's adopted it, technology keeps advancing, inflation continues in whatever other currencies exist. And at some point, theoretically, if all the other weak currencies failed, right? You think we go from 130 currencies to 100 to 30 to 12 to 10 to maybe one day there's the dollar and the CNY and you're down to 2, and then maybe we decide to throw away the dollar and the CNY and we get enlightened and we just use Satoshis. Yeah. And you get the perfect Austrian economics hard money, perfect thing. Maybe. Doesn't matter to me if we do or we don't, but let's say we did. Well, then it goes up with the productivity of the civilization, right?